I'm Barbara Alvarez. I'm a contributing writer for the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and I specialize in writing about abortion and reproductive rights.
So on today's program, we're going to commemorate what should have been the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. We're going to talk about the religious crusade against abortion, including that gut punch by the Supreme Court last year in overturning this constitutional right to abortion.
And we'll catch up on the latest developments, such as the protections for medication abortion. We'll take a look at how many states have banned abortion and upcoming legislation that's expected this year, as well as what you can do to protect abortion rights.
So Ask an Atheist, as always, is an interactive show, and you can post your comments or questions on FFRF's Facebook page or email askanatheist@ffrf.org. And we'll get to those by the end of the show. So please let us know what you're thinking. Now, last Sunday, there were marches around the country, thankfully, to protest the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and that included here in Madison, Wisconsin. Madison's march was the centerpiece for this national campaign because we were considered a marquee march because Wisconsin is one of many states where abortion is now cruelly banned, even in cases of rape and incest. And we also have an important state Supreme Court race this spring that may decide the outcome of our current challenge of Wisconsin's draconian 1849 ban. So you'll be seeing photographs from this event, also a timely message on FFRF's marquee last Sunday at our office, pointing out that this Supreme Court betrayal by our High Court, there it is on the screen, calls for court reform, fix the court. And Dan Barker and I were proud to be part of that march, so you might catch us in some of the images. And the theme was bigger than Roe, and also it's not over. This is the time to resist. So Barbara, while we continue to look at some of these photos of this glorious resistance, what are your thoughts during this anniversary week of Roe versus Wade's 50th anniversary?
Well, Laurie, it's a complicated feeling because losing Roe was such a major loss, and yet Roe was really the floor for abortion rights. To be clear, Roe was a major step forward because it made abortion legal for millions of people. I think it's important for us to contextualize that when the Supreme Court passed Roe or decided on Roe in 1973, this was at a time when women couldn't even get credit cards in their own name. That was not until 1974. So Roe was a really significant milestone and a cultural shift in talking about abortion and making abortion legal. However, I think it's also important for us to realize that Roe was not enough. As we saw over the course of almost 50 years, even though we had Roe v. Wade, it left so much room for harmful abortion bans, rules, and amendments. One of them is the Hyde Amendment, which was passed shortly after Roe and has continuously been passed bipartisan. And that has disenfranchised millions of people from actually accessing abortion care and making abortion a reality. So even though Roe made abortion technically legal across the country, it wasn't necessarily accessible.
So I think the Hyde Amendment cut off public funding for women on Medicaid.
It did,
federally,
yes.
And then about, 3/4 or 2/3 of our states then went and cut off state funding.
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, in FFRF's home state of Wisconsin, thankfully, we've had organizations like the Women's Medical Fund of Wisconsin, also known as WMF Wisconsin, which was founded before Roe in 1972 by Ann Nicole Gaylor, FFRF's principal co-founder, and Bob West. And it continues to be in operation. It's one of the oldest abortion funds in the nation, and to date has funded over 30,000 abortions. And the donations come from everyday people. Sometimes the people who need an abortion funding for an abortion, they need is $27 for gas money. Other people need thousands of dollars. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that without Roe, those funds are needed more than ever before. So while Roe was an important step in the right direction, we need so much more going forward. And Laurie, I'd like to know, what are your thoughts now that it's been half a year since the Dobbs ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade?
Well, I'm still in mourning, and I get angrier and angrier about it because I was, I think, 17 when Roe versus Wade was handed down. I saw this women's revolution and the huge change in attitude and accessibility, and now to go backward to an even worse state than we were before Roe is just untenable. And I just do have to remind people that if it wasn't for the religious, clutch on our government, and especially the Christian nationalists right now, and the anti-abortion agitation to take over our Supreme Court with Christian nationalists, we would not be in this predicament. We need to keep religion not only out of government, but out of our social policy, and this is what happens when religion interferes with our laws and our policies and our Supreme Court. And of course, 5 of the 6 justices who overturned Roe versus Wade are Catholic. The 6th justice was raised Catholic. 5 of them are white males. It's very, very distressing to see our capture of our court essentially by Christian nationalists, the Federalist Society, the 3 Trump appointees making all the difference in achieving for the anti-abortion movement what it has been trying to do for decades. We need to take a page from the anti-abortionists and not give up. It's not over, and we have to pound the courts with our lawsuits, we have to pound the streets, and we have to vote, and we have to make this one of our priorities as the anti-abortionists did so that we can recover our rights. So that's my little homily. And so the Dobbs ruling saying that abortion is not a federal right, of course, is launching legislative hand-to-hand, state-by-state combat. And Barbara, can you give us an update on which states have banned or tried to ban abortions and where states are holding firm?
Absolutely. Just like you said, it's become every state for themselves. Roe was really significant because it made abortion a federal right across all 50 states and territories. We don't have that anymore. And so that means that what is found to be legal according to one state's constitution is illegal in another state. And here's an example. Recently, the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled that their state's ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy was unconstitutional, and that it put unreasonable restrictions on a woman's right to privacy. At the same time, shortly after that, the Idaho Supreme Court upheld 3 state laws on abortion, including a ban at conception, a ban after 6 weeks of pregnancy, and a civil enforcement measure, because their court ruled that the state constitution had no right to an abortion. So as we're talking about, there were some gaps with Roe, but what it did do was it created some level of consistency, and now it's complete chaos. This is where we're at right now. There is a full ban in effect in 13 states. These states include Idaho, South Dakota, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. You can see on that map that that's an entire chunk of the country where there is a total abortion ban.
And most of it in the South, too, this whole swath.
Yes, and we also have a 6-week abortion ban that's in effect in Georgia. Now, beyond the total abortion ban and the 6-week abortion ban, there's an array of states that have 15, 18, and 20-week abortion bans. Those include Utah, Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. And then we have a host of states, 8 states actually, where the abortion bans are in limbo. It's really going to come down to what their courts decide.
So those are the states there where they have tried to ban abortions, and right now the courts are holding firm.
Yes. So really right now we only have 16 states where abortion is solidly legal. And I want to say that is a huge shame, because some people, and I wrote about this week for FFRF's newsletters and a weekly blog that I write about abortion rights.
freethoughtnow.org you can go to read Barbara's blogs.
So I wrote about how some people think that abortion bans at 15, 18, or 20 weeks aren't that bad, or that they're justifiable or something like that. But the truth is, as I wrote about this week, any abortion ban is an infringement on bodily autonomy, because no pregnancy is the same, and everybody has unique situations, and they need to be able to make those decisions on their own and with a doctor. And there are several reasons people might not even know that they're pregnant to begin with. They might not have the funds. They might get wrapped up in a crisis pregnancy center, which are religiously rooted fake clinics that outpace abortion clinics in this country by major steps, and they dissuade people from getting an abortion. Not to mention, young people who are minors and need abortion care, they have some of the highest rates of abortion at later gestational ages because they often have to get parental consent. And for many teens, asking your parent or telling your parent you're pregnant puts their life in jeopardy. So while there are some exceptions in certain states, exceptions for rape or incest or things like that, it's also really important to note that those exceptions are rarely allowed. It typically requires filing police reports, doctors having to consult teams. It's an extremely complicated process. So what I'm trying to say here is that we only have 16 states in this country where abortion is solidly legal, and that abortion is inaccessible for millions and millions of people, and any abortion ban is an infringement on that bodily autonomy.
Hear, hear. So, Barbara, there's been a lot of new developments, and some of them are very good developments regarding medication abortion. So before we talk about those developments, first, how safe and effective are abortion pills?
Abortion pills are extremely safe. Research has shown that abortion pills are safer than many over-the-counter medicines, including Tylenol, and that abortion pills send fewer people to the emergency than Tylenol or Viagra. Abortion pills were first approved by the FDA in 2000, and they have consistently been found to be just as safe as in-clinic abortion procedures. For context, it's important to share that giving birth is 14 times more dangerous than having an abortion. And we're not seeing our legislators trying to stop people from giving birth right now. So it's really not about, when we see anti-abortion legislators talking about how abortion pills are dangerous or that they're concerned about their safety, that's not true, because research has shown time and time again that it's safer than Tylenol, and that actually giving birth is 14 times more dangerous. I think it's also necessary for us to realize that medication abortion is extremely common. This isn't some rare way of getting an abortion. It actually accounts for more than half of all abortion procedures in the United States. On the flip side, denying abortion care, not making abortion accessible, which is what abortion pills can do, is make abortion more accessible. If we deny that, studies have found that denying abortion care for wanted abortions is associated with higher mortality rates, poorer health outcomes, financial devastation, among other tragedies. So the science and the research shows that not only is medication abortion extremely safe, but also that denying access to abortion puts people's life in jeopardy.
So then what's going on now with both, there's been developments with both the FDA and the USPS regarding abortion medication?
So there have been some updates that seem to be headed in the right direction. However, again, there's always work to be done. The first thing I want to talk about is the USPS, U.S. Postal Service. The Department of Justice recently cleared the U.S. Postal Service to deliver abortion pills by mail. So this includes in states with abortion restrictions. Basically, they said that the Department of Justice for the USPS said that delivering abortion pills by mail did not violate the Comstock Act, which the Comstock Act was really a purity law that at one time prevented information about abortion and contraception and reproductive health care, as well as any type of devices or methods to be sent via mail. And so they determined that abortion pills being sent by mail doesn't violate that. Beyond that, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, recently determined that pharmacies, including major retailers like CVS and Walgreens, can now dispense prescription abortion pills. So that means that the FDA has said it's perfectly safe for somebody to be able to pick up their abortion pill prescription at the pharmacy as opposed to a doctor handing it to them. Now, that's a huge step, and it's really major. However, I want to share that it's not going to be a panacea. What the FDA didn't do was it didn't remove abortion pills from the REMS program. The REMS program, which stands for the Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy, highly regulates abortion pills. As we've just talked about, abortion pills are safer than Tylenol and Viagra, and yet those types of medications are not highly regulated. The type of medication that's typically on the REMS program deals with cancer treatments or medication for people with multiple sclerosis or opioids or antipsychotic medication. And they are still continuing to group abortion pills along with those other types of medications. So what this means for pharmacies is that pharmacies are now going to have to adhere to the many burdensome protocols that it takes in order to be certified to dispense abortion pills. So that means that a lot of pharmacies, they are going to not go through with that complicated process to facing political and social pressure from anti-abortion groups. So we might not see as many pharmacies as could or should be available to dispense abortion pills actually doing it, because abortion pills are still highly regulated. And again, that regulation, it's not based on science. It's only religiously rooted. And unsurprisingly, in response to this decision by the FDA to allow abortion pills to be dispensed at pharmacies, we're already seeing anti-abortion legislators and activists bringing into action to restrict that from happening. It's already extremely hard through the REMS program, and these anti-abortion factions are trying to make it even harder. For instance, the House lawmakers recently received a letter from anti-abortion groups asking them to prioritize the banning of interstate delivery of abortion pills. And legislators in Missouri and Georgia have recently introduced bills that would make abortion pills inaccessible. Furthermore, there are efforts in Texas that would allow civil lawsuits against people who have terminated their pregnancies with abortion pills.
No surprise there, huh?
Yeah. It's unbelievable, and yet it's believable. And then in Oklahoma, lawmakers asked the state attorney general to clarify whether or not abortion pill usage constituted murder. So we have to take the wins where we can, but also recognize that the anti-abortion movement is not going to going to step aside.
It's not being placated by the Dobbs decision. It's just being emboldened.
That's exactly right.
There are the abortion abolitionists. They want federal, nationwide, complete ban on all abortion, for example. And to me, it is so bizarre to see this 1873 Federal Comstock Act being seriously invoked by anti-abortionists, and they're claiming that this law, that Margaret Sanger's lawsuit basically overturned back in 1933, it's going to make it illegal to send abortion pills through the mail. So we are going backward by more than a century in this nation. Of course, here in Wisconsin, we're dealing with an 1849 ban. So Barbara, what can people do to help?
Well, there are several ways that people can help out, and we need that help now more than ever, because 2023, there's a lot of legislation on the books that looks pretty bad. And I'll just tell you a few pieces of that legislation that's looking bad and exactly why we need help. So we're going to see anti-abortion groups really pushing for new laws that target people who are helping others seek abortions across state lines. So essentially, we're going to see attacks on interstate travel. And that's going to impact people, for example, in Wisconsin, FFRF's home state. We have some great abortion funds in Wisconsin, as I talked about the Women's Medical Fund of Wisconsin, who help people in Wisconsin get the money that they need so that they can travel for abortion care in Illinois or Minnesota. But we are going to see some legislation that's going to try and attack the ability to even travel across state lines for abortion care, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
It's like the Fugitive Slave Act. I mean, it's just like a modern iteration of the Fugitive Slave Act, this idea that you can ban an abortion outside of your state and you can go back and fetch that person and take away their bodily autonomy.
We've seen, abortion bounty hunting play out in Texas before the Dobbs decision even happened. We saw that happen about 10 months before the Dobbs decision. So to think that, that couldn't happen, that law will never come, is pretty naive at this point, because we've seen how laws have been enacted that specifically go out to look for people who are helping others get abortions. And so some other legislation we're going to see is legislation that limits how abortion funds operate. So, abortion funds are also going to be getting some legislation against them as well. And also, we're going to see legislation that tries to limit how people provide support to patients. And we're also going to see a lot more. I imagine we're going to see a lot more legislation that tries to go after providers who provide abortion care for people who are coming from out of state. We also recently just saw a new bill that was introduced, I believe it was in Oklahoma, I want to say, that is trying to bring the abortion fight to the county level, to the city level. So saying that the local government is going to be able to limit the access to what reproductive health care you receive. And of course, we've been seeing this already, but we're going to see more and more legislation that's fetal personhood laws, which basically says that is at conception, it's a person, and that is not only going to impact abortion, but it's going to severely impact contraception, particularly things like Plan B, emergency contraception pills and IUDs, because they're operating from a place that's not based in science at all, where science has very clear rules about when fertilization happens. And they're saying, well, as soon as somebody's conception, that's it. It's a full-on person. So we can expect more of that. Now, I also want to share a couple of the good things we can see, and this is exactly also where we need to be putting our energy towards. In California, a law went into effect that expands the ability to who can conduct abortion procedures. So that's expanded it from just doctors to qualified nurse practitioners and certified midwives who are going to be able to provide abortion care without physician supervision. That's huge, because that means it's expanding the pool of people who are able to provide abortion, which is going to make it more accessible. In New York, there's also a new law that now requires health insurance for private insurers to cover birth as well as cover abortion services without requiring co-payments or co-insurance. In the Midwest, there's some newly introduced bills that seem promising. Minnesota just had a bill come through that would codify the right to abortion. And in Illinois, legislation recently passed through the House that would require insurance plans regulated by the state to fully cover abortion medications. And so that would make abortion medication eligible for thousands of people. So anyway, those are some of the things that we have up the pipeline. And what we need people to do at this moment and consistently is we need people to be active. That means subscribing to FFRF's news alerts, where we give action alerts on how you can call your representatives, how you can demand that they make abortion care accessible to people, that they strike down any laws that are anti-abortion. We will equip you with the scripts so you know exactly what to say. You can pass those scripts along to your friends, to your family, to your social networks. We really got to put public pressure on our legislators. The other thing that we can do is that we can talk about the safety of abortion pills. You can go back to the archives on Free Thought now, where you can see many articles that I've written talking about why abortion is safe, and especially why abortion pills should be more accessible than ever. And please educate yourself on that, and make sure to weave that into your conversation next time somebody says, well, I am for abortion, except, it should be banned at this certain week or something like that. I hope that you're able to have conversations with them about why that is not only not rooted in science, but bodily autonomy. That's strictly out of the religious rights playbook. And the last thing that we can do, and so important, is to donate to abortion funds. Whether you want to support the Women's Medical Fund in Wisconsin, their web address is wiabortionfund.org, or you want to support an abortion fund in your own state, you can find that at abortionfunds.org. Like we're talking about, abortion funds are needed more than ever to help people cross state lines, get the care they need, and we're going to be seeing a tax on abortion care through abortion funds very soon.
And then I would add, of course, this is not an election year, but make sure you vote. in all the races coming up. And actually, although it's not a congressional election year, we have a big race at the Supreme Court level, our Wisconsin State Supreme Court. So depending on where you live, there may be elected elections coming up that will impact abortion rights. And also, if you live near a state capital and you've got bans coming up or anti-abortion legislation, you need, if possible, to show up. Call the offices. Our action alerts give you an automated way to quickly email your member of Congress or your state legislator, but the phone calls and the personal attendance there at hearings will really make a difference. And now I'm going to see if we have any questions. I'm sure we have some or comments. So I'm going to have to refresh this in a minute, but we have a few. We have a question here, maybe for you, Barbara. Where is a good place to learn more information about upcoming events to support abortion around the nation?
That's a great question. To anybody that wants to know about events for abortion, my biggest suggestion would be to follow your local abortion fund on social media, subscribe to their newsletter, follow the National Network for Abortion Funds on social media as well, and subscribe to their newsletter. You would probably want to follow Planned Parenthood on their social media and also subscribe to their newsletter. There's usually a lot of information that gets pulled and posted on those accounts and in their newsletters about events that are coming both on a local level, so hyper local if it's an abortion fund, or perhaps at a state or national level if we're talking about a larger network. So that's what I would recommend.
So Jessica C. has an intriguing question. She asks, are women going to have to take a pregnancy test before leaving a state? And I think that's rhetorical, but making a very good point that how imprisoned are women and people who can get pregnant going to be in banned states? I mean, they are not free states anymore. So very apt question, Jessica.
I don't see that actually happening, but I wouldn't put it past the religious right to want something like that to happen. Absolutely.
So we have another question. Is it possible to see a national abortion ban in the future? And I'm going to take a quick moment to respond to that, and then Barbara, you can. This is the goal of the anti-abortion movement, and they have been able to accomplish what I would have thought was unthinkable, the reversal of almost 50 years of precedent with Roe versus Wade. And, there were earlier court decisions prior to Roe versus Wade. There were states where abortion was legal before 1973. And it wasn't all that controversial a decision, as many historians and legal historians have shown. So they have been able to capture the Supreme Court, in some cases the presidency. There's a very good book by Mary Ruth Ziegler, who's an abortion rights expert, an attorney, called Dollars, I'm not forgetting what it's called, Dollars for, it's a book about how the anti-abortion movement raised all this money to capture the Republican Party and make as their priority the refashioning of the Supreme Court so it would overturn Roe versus Wade. Money speaks. So we are at a crossroads in our country democratically with a huge amount of, our liberty and our democracy hinge on the 2024 presidential and congressional elections. So, we cannot discount that they could succeed as they have succeeded in Poland, the Catholic Church in Poland, in banning abortion entirely there.
Yeah. So the book that you're referencing, Laurie, is called Dollars for Life, the Anti-Abortion Movement and the Fall of the Republican Establishment by Mary Ziegler. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Laurie. This is the goal. There is no common ground with anti-abortion religious rights. Any effort of, first of all, let me just say, in September, Lindsey Graham, Republican Party, introduced a 15-week national abortion ban after they said, no, this is going to be states' rights. We're not going to do a national abortion ban. This is just going to come down to the states. That's all that the fall of Roe is going to do. And then a few months later, they showed themselves for what they really are and introduced a 15-week national abortion ban. So there is no common ground there is no happy middle when working with anti-abortion legislators, because any type of ground that they're trying to meet, oh, we'll start with 15-week abortion ban. All that is just trying to normalize the vilification of abortion. I really believe that. All it is just trying to create a cultural shift where now we think abortion past 15 weeks is just absolutely blasphemous, when really that is something that is up to a medical decision with doctors, and that's a case-by-case situation. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to paint abortion as bad, and they're starting at certain benchmarks and are going to move towards a national abortion ban. That's what they want. I mean, we see this all the time now.
Clear about it.
Yes,
this
absolutely.
Isn't a secret.
Right, exactly. And I mean, as I was saying, like, we see legislators, when pressed, say, well, what about abortion in cases of rape or incest? And they will say, well, that's a gift from God.
Not much of a gift.
No exceptions.
And of course, as you pointed out earlier, and there was just some reportage in the New York Times showing that even in states that have exceptions for rape and incest, which, by the way, Wisconsin does not, nobody's getting abortions because, first of all, there's been a sort of segregation of abortion services. There's been, the medical profession hasn't been as supportive as it could have been, and so most of the abortions are performed by a few doctors in a freestanding clinic. They're not usually performed in OBGYN's facilities when you go in, where you would get your other services. It hasn't been trained, people haven't been trained as much. So when the clinics have closed in banned states, who are you going to go to for that abortion? First of all, it's going to be somebody who's not used to performing an abortion, never wanted to in the first place, or is very uneasy about the law. They have to go to bat. They have to sign papers. They have to go through paperwork to champion that poor rape victim or incest victim or woman who might die without her abortion care, and they're not willing to do so. They're not equipped to do so, and the whole thing it's rigged. And we see the same thing with health. If there are laws that say you can get an abortion if your health is jeopardized or your life is jeopardized, there's been huge discussion, front page articles in the Wisconsin State Journal here in our state, quoting doctors saying they're so afraid that they'll lose their license if they try to save somebody's life by doing an abortion in our state. And then somebody in the medical establishment or the state questions their judgment. At what point was she really going to die? So it's chilling compassion and chilling medical care across the board. So it's a myth that there really are exceptions in these banned states.
Absolutely. And I think also it's important to note that it creates a very unsupportive culture for medical providers, because now they have to be afraid of what their colleagues might say, or if their colleagues might report them or disagree with them. I mean, instead of basing things off of science, now it's being based on interpersonal conflict. And also these abortion bans, that impacts the type of education that medical school students are receiving. Are they even learning about abortion care? And that is a whole problem of having doctors that don't really understand abortion or how to conduct an abortion. And so this anti-abortion culture is having huge ramifications in all areas. And the fact that there's a question about, could there be a national abortion ban? Absolutely. That's where this is headed. The anti-abortion movement hasn't been working on this for 50 years to stop now.
No, and I think that you're right, that the personhood amendments, which they floated almost immediately after Roe versus Wade, this is also where they're going. They want to amend the Constitution to take it out of the hands of Congress to remedy. And this would be the insertion of religious dogma in our godless Constitution, because this is all based on a religious imagining of when life begins, and they're trying to impose their religious dogma on the rest of us. So we are going to have to fight really hard and not give up. And I want to thank you for not giving up, Barbara. And then just one bright note this is early to report, but Mary Ruth Ziegler, who is all over the media, you see her in every news article about abortion rights. She was just on Fresh Air and all kinds of programs. She has a new book out called Roe, History of a National Obsession. And she has agreed to receive the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Forward Award at our upcoming convention in mid-October here in Madison, Wisconsin. And that's reserved for people who are moving society forward. And she's been a great, not only a legal historian, but a great abortion rights activist. So I'm looking forward to hearing that speech. And so that does wrap up our topic for today. And if you like Free Thought programming, there's a heads up that FFRF's radio show this Thursday has a great guest, Emily Olson. She's a new city council member in Owasso, Michigan, who got into a heap of trouble for asking the council to drop their unconstitutional prayers. So I can't wait to hear her story firsthand. And you can go to ffrf.org/radio Thursday afternoon to learn more.
And on FFRF's TV show, Free Thought Matters, the guest this week will be none other than Ron Reagan.
Brave talking about this kind of thing. It's just, hey, it's not even a belief, as you know. It's a lack of belief. You know, all I'm saying is a lot of people believe this certain thing. I see no evidence for it, and I don't believe things without evidence or reason. I don't believe in tooth fairies, I don't believe in the Easter Bunny, I don't believe in Santa Claus, and I don't believe in anybody's God. And I like to remind people that everybody is an atheist. Let's say most people in the United States who are religionists are Christian. Okay, they don't believe in Allah, they don't believe in Baal, they don't believe in Thor, they don't believe in Odin or anything like that. So everybody's an atheist. Everybody dismisses all the thousands of gods that have come before their God, and they just pick this one God that they want to believe in. I just go one God farther, like most atheists.
You can watch that show Sunday on 13 Cities, or you can catch it on FFRF's YouTube channel by Thursday, and you can find out more at ffrf.org/freethoughtmatters. And you can find out more about FFRF at our website, ffrf.org, where you can join us. So thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing your expertise with us and helping FFRF challenge this religious crusade against individual liberty, bodily autonomy, and abortion rights. And I want to thank you, the viewer, for watching Ask an Atheist, and we'll be back next week. We'll be back next week, same time, same place.